Good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and call our February 15th Springdale Airport Commission meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Greg Collier,
Here.
Cameron McCarron,
Here.
Steve Smith, Jim Ulmer,
Here.
Joel Gardner,
Here.
Micah Thomason, Jason McMullen.
Here. All right. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from last month? If so, I would ask for approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, comments from the audience. This is an opportunity, if you're not on the agenda, for you to step up to the podium, and you have a maximum of 5 minutes to address the commission. Okay, I am going to skip down here. We're going to skip 5, 6, and 7 and go straight to number 8. Is John Adams, our representative, here? Would you like to come to the podium? So to the commission, if you'll remember, we approved the LOI for this 3 months ago? And we've since met, he's done everything he needs to do to this point to get the hangar built, other than getting our approval, and then he'll go back to planning. So everything has been approved, everything has been done that he needs to do. So if there's any questions for him, or if you have comments that you'd like to address to the commission, feel free now, and then we'll vote. This is the east side hangar, just east of the man hangar. The city hangar. Any questions from the commission? I would ask for a motion to approve construction for him to go on to the planning department.
I'll make that motion. I would definitely second the motion.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I actually misspoke. This is the hangar on the east side, across from Dr. Roller's hangar. Sorry. Okay, so you're approved here. You just need to go back now to the planning committee.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on to number 9. Dan Christensen, or anyone from Dan's party. This is the hangar that I previously mentioned off of Powell Street. And he's gone through the same process. Everything has been approved through the city, through Patsy's office, and now we're just going right back through the same process here to give him approval to move forward to planning. Any questions from the commission?
I'll have one. On the page presented before us, for drawings from Garber Engineering, there's a comment in here that states, City of Springdale requires a 20-foot separation from the detention pond to the building edge. We will need to shift the detention pond location to the east with this alternative. Please tell me more about that. Who's we and what are we shifting?
Yep, and that's an old exhibit. That was from our pre-conceptual or our conceptual meeting with the planning department. And so what I've been working with Jason and this project. And so To be able to fit this hangar in, we had about 130 feet of space between the Powell hangar and that detention pond. We need to shift the detention pond 15 feet further to the east to be able to maintain a city requirement for separation to that detention pond. And so as part of this project, we're going to be shifting that detention pond further east for that 15 feet. But it won't impact the development that we've been talking about on our hangar development plan. All of that can still be as shown in those exhibits.
And there's no additional cost to the city or the airport for this shift?
That is to be determined. So because we haven't gotten started on the Powell Hangar project yet, or the dirt work for the Powell Hangar project, I'm going to change order in that shifting of the detention pond. And so it might incur a little bit of extra seeding or sodding, and any of that additional like restoration will end up going to this project. Yep.
Thank
Any
you,
other
Joe.
questions?
Any other questions?
Where's the Jeff Mann hangar on this? Is
Yeah.
it on the very left of the page?
Yes, that's correct.
So it's this wide area here.
No, so move to the right. So that's the apron that we're constructing, the Powell Hangar project.
this
That's
is
the
it.
existing slab that's there today.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And so this is going just to the east of that.
Any other questions?
The road, sorry, the detention pond is under the road then? Sorry, which button is it? It's just this button. The proposed access road here, is that
Right.
one?
No, the detention pond is to the east of that hangar, so to the right on the page. And we're just shifting it 15 feet. And so when Garver designed that Powell Hangar project, we knew that we could utilize this spot for a future hangar. And just what I didn't know at that time is that we need an extra 15 feet. And so this is correcting that assumption or that deficiency that I had in that original design.
Literally just moving 15 feet to the east, not on any concrete, asphalt, anything. Anything else? I would ask for a motion.
I'll
To
make that
approve?
motion.
Motion to approve as submitted. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
All right, you've been approved. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Okay, now then, we're going to roll back up to number 5, proposed hangar rent increase. James has passed out a potential 12% rent increase to show us exactly what it would do per hangar and total on the back of, or on the second page to give us an idea. I know we've all looked and discussed this for several months. I'd like to come to a decision today on what we want to do as a commission from a rate increase standpoint. I appreciate the work that was done on this, and I know Cameron has done some due diligence as well to see from an increased standpoint where he felt comfortable. As I've looked through this, I feel like a 15% increase is fair based off of the inflation that we've had over the last couple of years. And as Cameron and I talked about, cost of insurance and everything else is going up for the airport. So we do need to take an increase to help offset that. And as you know, and as we've discussed, we can revisit this every 2 years. So we're right in line with where we need to be from our last increase. So there are a couple of notes that I wanted to mention. I know we've kicked this around in different ways and how we want to look at it from a increased standpoint, but remember that we are not trying to break the bank here. We're just trying to provide a service to our tenants and give them an opportunity to have a nice place to park their airplanes and us make a little money on the side as well. And in turn, buying their gas from us here and reaping the benefits of the airport that we have. With that, I think I'd like to roll it to Cameron and let you give us some information that you've gotten.
Yeah, thank you. So I think it was a week ago, I met with Cody and James and really kind of dissected the P&L for the airport and looked at some of the additional costs that were coming at us. Like you mentioned, insurance year over year, I think it increased almost $10,000. So there's been, just inflation, a few other things that have creeped up on us where, it's just due to the nature of the economy that we're in, it's just the cost of doing business is much greater than what it was 2 years ago. So after dissecting the P&L and really looking at things, James and Cody and I, felt like at that time that a 12% increase was reasonable to do based on some of the additional costs that were kind of coming at the airport. So that's kind of where we landed. Now I think it's up for debate whether or not it's 12%, 15%, or whatever percentage the commission would like to see. But at the end of the day, we do have a lot of additional costs that are coming at the airport. And to keep it maintained and keep it mowed and keep it, even fuel prices, we've seen a huge increase in cost of that over the last couple of years. So at the end of the day, we're just trying to offset some of those costs. And I think based on the analysis that we looked at, that 12 to 15% range was reasonable.
Joel, I'll just roll down to you if you've got anything to add, and we'll just come back through.
I would personally lean towards the 15%.
Jim?
I agree. I do rate studies all the time on water and sewer, and I've seen a 36% increase in the last 2 years, and it's mind-boggling, and it's not going to go away. So I think it's reasonable.
Steve?
Oh, I'll just concur with those guys. I think 15 is pretty reasonable.
Micah?
Yeah, 15 is the direction I would want to go with it as well. What did the numbers show, James, when you guys did that? Was it a 10% or what the increase was?
It was give and take because every year is different. Last year we had the major storms, so back-to-back $10,000 insurance hit, so.
Yeah, I think 15 is where I would settle as well.
Jason, anything to add?
I think, at first I would think that because of inflation and some of the things that the others have mentioned, that a higher increase may be more favorable. But like also mentioned, you don't want to do too much and run good people off that are, using the hangars for what they need to. So I agree with the others. I think 15% is fair.
Then I'd ask for a motion.
I'll go ahead and make that motion to do a rate increase of 15%. And as far as an execution date, I'll leave that up to you, sir.
That'll be May 1st. Is that right, Ernest? Will be 60 days out? 90 days out, June 1st.
I'll make the second.
Can you add into that, amend that just a little bit where we look at it definitely in 2 years?
I'll make the second.
I'd ask for a roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
McMullen,
Yes.
Thomason,
Yes.
Okay, so that passes. We will start the 15% increase effective June 1st. Thank you. Moving on to number 6, hangar subleasing. We've got couple of things to discuss here. So in your packet, we have a couple of things. One particularly is the lease agreement. Let me pull it out before I start talking about it. Okay, so number 11, subletting, assignment, or covenants of lease. Lessee may not sublet premises in whole or in part of assign or transfer this lease or any interest therein without the prior written consent of lessor, which is the commission. Any such assignment without lessor's consent shall be void and shall, at the option of the lessor, terminate this lease. So it's been brought to the attention of the city and of the commission that we have a couple of subleases, a minimum of a couple of subleases going on right now, and we need to discuss that and address how we want to handle that. I think we have someone here in regards to those two hangars in question, if you'd like to come up and visit with us.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Roller. I'm speaking on behalf of Gary O'Neill, Max Crabtree, and Bob Hoyt, as well as NWA Flying Club. The understanding behind these hangars, we did not see this as a sublease because what this was, both people owned airplanes, sold airplanes, and then leased them back through the NWA Flying Club and kept the planes in their hangars since they are lessees of those planes as well. In reading through the lease agreement, there's nothing in there pertaining to ownership, so it looks as if you could have a leased plane in a hangar, which I know a lot of people do because a lot of airplane owners, we will lease our own planes back from our own LLCs for tax benefits and so forth, and that's the case with both of these two hangars, and that's why those planes are in there. I can understand why it looks like subleasing, but I don't think it falls under that category, under that scenario. And if it does, how can we fix that? Because we want to be in good standings with you guys and make sure that y'all are happy as well.
The aircraft that were in the two hangars listed here, were they owned by NWA Flight Club? Is that what you said just a second ago?
They are owned by, I believe it would be Gary O'Neill's name is the airplanes where he leases those back to NWA Flying Club that leases them out.
And then who leases the actual hangars from the city?
Max Crabtree and Bob Hoyt.
Okay. Are they affiliated with the Flying Club?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Both members, so they both be lessees under the Flying Club.
So I think for me personally, I go back to, I mean, it's black and white here, subleasing is not allowed. You cannot sublease a hangar unless you come to the commission and ask to do that.
Sure.
And that, I think we're 2 years in on this, and
Yes,
it was
sir.
just, we just recently found out that this was going on, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And so, once that was found out, and I guess Gary, I'm not exactly sure who, went to the city to try to pay that for the year up front, knowing that they were subleasing and shouldn't be subleasing. So I have a little bit of a problem with you guys not understanding that you were subleasing when you go in and you try and pay it for a year when it's been paid for the month for the last 2 years.
Right,
Okay.
it's been paid up by Max, Bob, and Gary. All of the hangars, the 4 hangars that are involved total have all been paid yearly. They've not been paid monthly.
By Gary or by,
Well, it's been, I don't know who's taking the check up there, but Max and Bob are also paying theirs as well. So, again, it was not a situation, looking at it as a sublease, it was a situation where they, as lessees of the aircraft, are storing the aircraft in the hangar. It does not say you cannot lease an airplane and store it in your hangar, and that's why I don't think nobody's come to the commission. I can understand, I mean, I can see where you guys are seeing it as well. I just, at the same time, it's leasing an airplane.
We talked about this in the December meeting and said that this is going to be complicated. I think it might have been Joel that brought up that we may have airplanes that are leased, that are owned in New Hampshire and are being leased by someone here at Springdale that's keeping it. And I thought that we left the last meeting with, we're going to find out what's going on, and then we would ask each individual case to come before us, and we would figure out what's going on in the actual situation. I mean, to me, a sublease means there's money being transferred, and they don't have ownership of any of they don't have any ability to get into that hangar to use those planes that are in there. And I think all three people involved in this are able to get in there and fly any one of those planes that they want. And I don't think any money's exchanging hands between private parties. I think it's all through the flight club. I mean, Chris might be able to explain more on how the flight club works in that. My suspicion is that they have planes that they lease for the flight club and that several owners have it and they're all participating in this together. I don't see this as a sublease.
So do we have record, Ernest, of who has paid, whose account those checks came from the last 2 years to pay that bill?
We don't track the name on the actual check. The check is just applied to the account, to the hangar account essentially. So without going back and digging through copies of checks and bank statements to see whose name is actually on the checks, there's not a good way to know. It's just, like I said, the checks are just applied to the hangar account.
To me, a sublease is more, if it's under XYZ's name and ABC writes the check for it, they're subleasing from XYZ.
But I can also say, I think part of the reason this came to the fore, and I don't know if this is in your packet, but Laura actually got an email from Mr. Crabtree that says, my hangar was transferred to Gary O'Neill 2 years ago. That sounds like a sublease when you hear that. But I appreciate his explanation as well. So, and also appreciate the fact that Mr. O'Neill was willing to pay it, but Chairman does make a good point. The commission's supposed to approve those. So that, in defense of staff, I believe that was, when you get an email that says it was transferred to somebody, that's all you think sublease.
And the plane was transferred over. I'm not going to argue with that. That's what I'm saying. There was I think that must have been a miscommunication of words. I actually have a document from Mr. Crabtree saying, keep the plane in the hangar as long as he can still use the plane or any other plane in NWA Flying Club, making him basically a leasee inside of the flying club. So my assumption is that was just a bad use of wording. I don't know, nobody's ever transferred the name of a hangar that I know of. I mean, if that's what we needed to fix it, I think, we can definitely talk to Max and Bob, make sure they're good with that, but I don't think there'll be any problems if that gets us in right standings with you guys as well.
Well, so what this really goes back to is we've got a long list of folks waiting for hangars. And if we start subleasing them throughout the tenants that are already here,
Sure.
then those folks are not moving up on the list to get the hangar that they've been waiting on.
Right, and I
That's
get
where
that.
this started.
But I do know that in the past, there has been moments where you guys have transferred ownership of hangars to other places. I mean, I know several people at Springdale that's done that, whether they bought a plane that was already in a hangar, the committee allowed that to happen. If that's what we need to do, I mean, whatever we need to do to make it right. Because I think both of these guys sold their planes with the expectations of being able to lease into the flying club, so they still had planes to fly. So instead of throwing everybody on the street, maybe there's another way that we need to just resolve the entire issue.
And I appreciate what you're saying, but I can also go back to the people that you're bringing up, how that was done, came to the commission to get that done
Sure.
initially.
Yeah, and that's looking back, going forward, we definitely need to make sure that's done in the future for sure. I think that was just a misunderstanding of what the sublease actually was, since there was still an ownership of leasing the plane. For instance, my own plane is subleased it's leased through the LLC that bought the plane, basically, that we have ownership of as well. And so if you look at ownership, I don't own a plane. There's an LLC that owns a plane that I lease it from, and I get to use the tax benefits off that LLC, but that's very common for a lot of pilots all over the world, really. So.
Yeah, but we're kind of muddying this up. The point is simply, if someone leases a hangar and someone pays them to lease it, that's a sublease agreement.
Sure.
And that's what we do not allow, unless you come to us for permission initially for us to approve that. Otherwise, it breaks the contract.
But again, Max and Bob are the ones, whether they're paying Gary to go take that check up there, or they're paying it themselves, they're the ones that are still paying for that. They're allowing those planes to be in there because they're leasing those planes back from the NWA Flying Club.
Well, that's the million-dollar question, I think, is who is paying that?
Well, sure, and if it's worth digging into, go dig into it, but again, I think nobody's making money off these hangars. That's not been the case. It's just been a matter of keeping the hangars so they can be used for those planes.
No, this is all about getting information.
Sure,
So we can figure out
absolutely.
what's going on, make the best decision for the commission, from the commission for the airport. So I appreciate everything you're saying, and I'm sure the commission probably has some other questions as well.
So just to clarify the money side, no one's paying, whose name is on the Crabtree and the other gentlemen are on the actual leases with our city?
Each lease.
And no one is paying them to use the hangars. Someone is just writing a check to the city to cover the cost of the lease. Is that right?
Correct.
Like,
Correct.
no one's getting any profit off of this. So,
We don't know because we don't know who wrote the check or,
but,
If my word
like
is
Ernest,
anything-
it's not a legal definition of who pays rent for me. If someone wants to gift me rent, that doesn't change the fact, I'm not subleasing now to that person.
Well, I can tell you, again, how this came up was, we had an individual come to the city clerk's office wanting to pay hangar rent for 2 hangars they did not have a lease for. And on one of those hangars, Laura sent an email that said, quote, "My hangar was transferred to Gary O'Neill." So that's why everyone's thinking it's been sublet. And I understand their explanation, and I understand where you're coming from, but when they say my hangar was transferred, what else are we supposed to think?
Was the hangar transferred?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, I don't know why he's thinking that unless he's thinking in his mind his airplane was transferred.
That's what I was going to say, the airplane. Brandon Morris, about a 16-year hangar tenant at Springdale. I've been around most of my life around Springdale. And if it wasn't for you guys in this hangar and the ability to be a tenant for aviation purposes, I would not be the person I am today. I made minimum wage pumping gas at the airport for about 6 years. I've been a friend of most of the people working there. I've spent money at multiple businesses. I've been a student pilot. I'm now an airline pilot. I've talked to you guys a couple times before, and that was all blood, sweat, and tears to get where I am now. And all that goes in to say that without my hangar, even making, pretty low income, I wouldn't have been able to acquire dry leases on aircraft that I have stored in my hangar, and I have paid you guys from my checkbook. Sometimes struggled a little bit to do it, and you've been very lenient with me over the years, and we've gotten better after about, after that first 5 years, kind of rough. But I didn't have the money to own an airplane.
if you
But
don't
I did a
mind,
lease.
what does this have to do with the
I'm-
sublease?
This just adds a little complication, I think, because of the wording. It's kind of weakly written into the leases. I didn't own an aircraft. I rented a hangar, and the aircraft that I used wasn't owned by me, but as it's written in most dry leases, the aircraft are used as that person's own aircraft where they pay for everything, maintenance, wear and tear, storage, insurance, everything, except like large items like engines and propellers. And then after a period of 3, 6, in my case, about 2 years, where I dry leased 172 to get my time, that went back to the owner and it repositioned itself to its originating location. But it was in a way my aircraft, but I wasn't the registered owner of the aircraft. But I was the user of that hangar and for aviation purposes use that aircraft. So a lot of people can't afford to buy the airplane, they just lease it, which is very similar to owning the aircraft, except the registration isn't, specifically given to that person. And I'm a partner in a Cessna 170 that's not in my name, but it's in my hangar. But I own a fraction of that airplane, and it's in my name, and in no way do I take money from that business to more than compensate myself. So this is just a little bit possibly more complex than maybe some of you guys might understand, because the use of aircraft isn't always cut and dry. Sometimes it's, hey, go take the key to my airplane, go fly. Store it in your hangar. As long as you take care of it, that's a lease in a way. Mine was an actual dry lease on an aircraft, so mine was a little bit more organized than that. And then you have guys that rent airplanes from flight schools. You have people that...
We understand that, and
Yeah.
I appreciate you doing that. We go back to Ernest's point a while ago. We had a piece of paper sent to us telling us that it had been transferred. And so
Okay.
that's where this started from. I don't know that we need educated on why and how. We just need to make a decision on as a commission, what do we want to do for these hangars? Because we were under the impression, I was under the impression coming in here, that based off of this letter,
Yeah.
this had been transferred and it broke this lease.
Well, I understand, and based on what I heard of that email, I think, and what Mr. Roller just said, the word hangar and airplane might have been switched in the thinking of that person, because they're not around aviation as intensely as some of us are. So I think when he said the hangar was transferred to them, the airplane was transferred to him is more of an accurate statement as to the operation of this thing. Because whoever's using it's associated with the flying club, and you've heard it all again, I'm not going to reiterate. But, it's just, I just want to maybe caution you just a little bit that it's very, very complicated when it comes to ownership of the aircraft as opposed to the use of the aircraft and then how it's used within the hangar. So that's all I wanted to say. If you have
What else,
questions.
questions?
Right now, we're hearing great testimony on the supposition of somebody's thought processes. I mean, I know I failed mind reading 101. Where is the actual author of the email? And why is the author of the email not standing up and saying, this is what I meant?
He's at work, I'm sorry, he works over at Precision Auto too. I've got Bob, the other hangar rental that I do bring back.
And you are whom, sir?
I'm Gary O'Neill.
Gary's the one who owns the LLC on the Flying Club and leases the aircraft to the Flying Club.
So how this came about was the email said from Mr. Crabtree, my hangar has been transferred to Gary O'Neill, and then Gary O'Neill standing at the city clerk's office wanting to pay for these two leases. It certainly gives us the impression they've been subletted.
I agree with that, and I sure would like to see how Crabtree, he is not known to be very well educated in the aeronautic field.
Yes, sir.
He's a
He's
student.
only got a year. He's been flying for over a year.
Why isn't he here saying this is what I meant? That's what I want to know.
We brought a letter with his signature on it.
You want to see this?
I knew he wasn't gonna be able to come today. I apologize for him
Sure.
not being here.
It's complicated.
I think it's simple. If he transferred the hangar, he's in violation of the sublease, and we have to decide what action we're going to take. I'm not sure we have the information in front of us right now to decide whether he transferred it. We have it in writing. They have it in writing the opposite way. I think the only way to find out is what Mr. Crabtree actually intended. And if he misspoke or if he miswrote that letter, whatever the answer is. And I think my personal opinion is if the hangar wasn't transferred, there's not a subleasing going on. If the hangar was transferred, it's a sublease.
That makes complete sense, too. We do have Bob here, if we want to take care of the other hangar. My understanding is Max is hangar 103, Bob's is hangar 201, sorry. So he is here, same deal as when he sold his aircraft. He was given the membership, so he's leasing airplanes.
Let's
back
get
to-
Bob up here and let's hear his
Absolutely.
take on this.
I'm Bob Hoyt.
Hello, sir. If you would just tell us briefly how that contract that you have, if there is a contract that you have with Gary, or how that transpired, and maybe how the rent process goes and the lease agreement goes.
As you can tell, I'm kind of old, and my memory is very bad, but I'll do my best to lay it out for you. I had a Cessna 150 tail dragger in that hangar, and Gary had a 172 right next door. And I decided that I wanted to sell my 150. And so Gary said, well, you can fly. You can become a member of our flying club, and then you can fly the club airplanes, whichever ones you're accredited, I guess, to fly. For instance, I think there's a twin in there now, and I can't fly twin aircraft. So anyway, for a while, I was going ahead and paying the rent, and it was just being taken off of my, the cost of being in the club. And it just seemed like it was a smarter thing to do, just to have Gary paying everything. I am still a member of the club, as far as I know. I have not flown in some time.
Do you pay dues or do you pay anything to the flight club?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you pay any dues to the flight club?
Do I pay dues? No. My dues is
The rent that's paid on the hangar?
yeah, the rental, okay. There was no transfer of anything that I know of. It's just a matter of who pays the rent. And that's, if there's other questions, I'll try to answer them, but that's what I recall anyway, right off the bat.
Thank you. Questions?
Ernest, do you see any issue with that? I mean,
You can make an argument either way. I can make the argument that the club's really the true lessor of those hangars. To be honest with you, I think the email's going around that we've been referring to, but I mean, it was a decision we thought we should bring before the commission for them to decide. We didn't have the authority to, like I said, I appreciate the fact that Mr. O'Neill was willing to pay for both of those for the whole year, but it did raise the issue based on the email and the information the staff had.
So we're going to address these one at a time. I guess there is no letter or email or anything on the second hangar in question here. That is simply what he's explained to us, how that transpired. We're going to come back to that one. The first one with Mr. Crabtree, to Micah's point, we don't have Mr. Crabtree here to defend himself, for one, or to explain himself. So perhaps we hold off on this for a month and invite him to come back next month and visit with the commission, and we can decide then how to move forward. How does that sound to the commission?
I have a question for Ernest again. So if you're in a legal binding contract, lease agreement through the city, the lessor, do they have to write a check directly from whatever entity or person that's on that lease agreement from that individual or from that entity? Or can you take a check or payment from any other entity that might pay for that binding agreement?
No, I don't think there's any requirement. There's no requirement in the lease itself that says that person, like Mr. Hoyt, has to be the one that pays it. But the intent behind it is he's the one that's leasing it and using it, which I think is kind of where staff is coming from when it's somebody else basically using it. I understand they're paying it for him. Same with Mr. Crabtree, it sounds like, but in essence, it's not them using it, which is the whole purpose of leasing it in the first place. So, no, there's no requirement that if it's leases, if Mr. Hoyt's the lessee, that he's the one that's got to pay it.
But I was going to say, but in essence, what you can do is you can sell your plane because you're not going to fly anymore. The guy that's buying the plane says you can fly it whenever you want to. And so the plane goes with the hangar. And so every time you make a transfer, you sell your plane. If you're going to keep it, if the plane's going to stay in Springdale, the new owner gets the new hangar.
Which is subleasing.
Oh, yeah, which obviously, I mean, he's not going to fly. And so he's sold the plane because he's not going to fly. But in order for that plane to be able to stay in a hangar, the other owner says, yeah, you can fly it whenever you want. That makes it's beating around the bush.
I think when we investigate 112 hangars, we're going to find a lot of situations like this. And I think it's going to be really difficult for us to determine planes leased for this person, flown by these people. I think this is going to be an issue. I guess I was thinking with subleasing, someone's profiting. We have a high demand need for a hangar. So if I'm renting a hangar, 202 for $149 a month, I'll let you use it, give me $300, I'll make an extra $150 on the deal. That's where I was concerned when we were talking about last month, is that we don't want that to happen. We want our list to be in play, not whoever goes the highest bidder.
Well, I'm looking at the other side where I'm sitting on that waiting list, and I'm number 3 on that waiting list. And every time I think of planes coming up where I can get a hangar, well, no, the plane and the hangar went together to the new owner, and I never move up the list, which is not being fair to the guy that's on the list.
And if I could speak into that too, as airplane owners, yes, sir.
Okay.
As airplane owners, if you're not allowed to sell your airplane and be able to ever transfer your hangar, you've just taken away a large value out of the airplane as well. And I understand that's written in the rules. I know that you can't just change that sitting here, but it might be something to consider in the future. Same deal as like Prairie Creek Marina. If you own a boat slip and you sell your boat, you can transfer your boat slip with your boat as long as the marina approves, which keeps the value of boats up, the same way this would keep the value of hangars up.
Well, it's very similar to this, but you have to come to the commission for approval.
And I totally get that.
Yeah, that's where your statement just hung you, was if the marina approves, and this place had not approved anything yet.
And I think that's where some misunderstanding was on our end when these transactions happened. And I apologize for that. Nobody was trying to sublease like Mr. Thomason said. I mean, this is not a situation about trying to make money. It's just the understanding that you were able to do this without us understanding how that works. Again, we're not trying to cause problems, but I do want to try to fix the situation and still have a hangar. And if I can throw anything at you, which you guys have at Springdale Airport, like it or not, with Gary O'Neill, is something that really no other airport in Northwest Arkansas has. And that's the ability for the common guy to go get a pilot's license. Because of him being able to keep it affordable, it's a unique thing. It's not for everybody. I get it. There's 2 other great flight schools there at Springdale that are wonderful. I'm not trying to compete with them or anything else, but there's something he's offering that taking this away is going to eventually take something away from the Springdale Airport too. Because you're making money every time one of his planes lands. And sometimes he has 2 or 3 students up there flying the pattern. That's a good thing for Springdale Airport. You know?
The issue is we should have heard that argument 2 years ago.
Yeah, totally.
Then we would have approved it.
I'm not going to argue with that one bit. I understand that. But
I believe we would have approved it.
But moving forward, I would love to figure out, is there a resolution that we can come to together on this to where?
Let's figure out where we're at now first, and then we
Sounds
can
good. Yes,
discuss
sir.
that later. So I'm going to ask the commission, do we want to move forward with Mr. Crabtree's hangar today to vote on terminating the lease agreement?
I
Or
don't. I want to wait and let him represent himself.
anyone else? What are your thoughts?
I would rather wait.
Okay, so let's put Mr. Crabtree's hangar off until next month. Can you get in touch with him and
Yes, sir.
ask
Yes,
him
sir.
to come visit with
Yes,
us?
sir.
at
Is
the
it the
next-
3rd Thursday every month?
Yes, it is.
Okay, sounds good.
21st, I think, next month.
Okay.
Going from memory.
Mr. Chairman, one other point of make. If Mr. Crabtree needs to be here, I would suggest that an official like the city attorney or somebody send that letter. You could tell Mr. Crabtree, expect to get a letter from the city to be here to discuss this matter. And if you don't, it'll be automatically terminated.
Good point.
All right.
Can we have that done? Okay.
If we can get that email back.
Here you go.
Okay. So that's Mr. Crabtree's. We're going to revisit that next month. Mr. Hoyt, do we have comments on Mr. Hoyt's hangar?
Well, I'm going to assume that Mr. Hoyt sold the plane to the flight club, and I think it's up to us to decide if we want to accept the transfer of the air hangar lease to the Flight Club.
And I would say too, as we make these decisions and as we discuss this, we're going to set a precedent for what we do moving forward.
When did that sale of that aircraft go to the Flight Club from Mr. Hoyt?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
2 years ago.
So everything's happened 2 years ago, okay.
Well ago, Mr. Hoyt, do you mind stepping up? Did you say that you bought the airplane a year ago?
Bought one?
Your airplane a year ago?
No, I bought my airplane in 2013, I believe.
Okay.
I sold it a couple of years ago, I guess. And for a while, I flew Gary's small airplane. I cannot remember what
That's
it
fine.
was. And since then, I've had some medical issues, and I haven't flown.
But the hangar is in your name.
The hangar, as far as I know, is in my name.
It is
I have
correct.
not signed it off to anybody.
Okay,
So a hangar's in a person's name that does not own an airplane.
correct. Nor is he
I don't
paying
think
rent.
he's leasing it.
But there's nothing in the lease agreement requiring ownership of an airplane that we can find, unless there's something I've missed somewhere along the way.
Yeah, but he is leasing the hangar, but he's not leasing an airplane.
He's a member of the flying club, so he's considered a leasee under the flying club.
When's the last time you flew a plane?
Probably 2 years ago.
When you sold it?
I'm sorry.
When you sold it?
I was not sold. Gary was with me.
No, he's talking about, it was after you sold it that you still flew.
Oh, I'm
Gary's.
sorry.
Yes, sir.
This was after I sold the Cessna, and I was then flying a smaller airplane, and it's just not in my head. I can't. Gary, what was it?
Aircoup 172.
Aircoup, yeah. And I had never flown one before, and so Gary was the safety pilot while I learned to fly the thing.
But you still have your pilot license?
I do still have a pilot's license.
Any other questions?
How many hangars does the Flying Club currently have that they are operating out of? I won't say leasing or subleasing.
Two, and then we've got two that are on hold. So four, if you count the ones that we're talking about today.
Well, I think he's talking about the two that we're talking about today as being the two on hold.
So there's 2 hangars that the Flight Club leases,
Yes, sir.
and then the 2 hangars in question.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We've got 5 airplanes.
Right.
Can you explain how the members of the Flight Club have a interest in the Flight Club? And what I mean by interest is interest of ownership, interest of lease, interest of whatever the, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, so there's an initial buy-in to the flying club. It's $500 to buy in. At that point, you pay $250 a month for the average member. That, at that point, makes you a leasee of the aircraft or into the flying club. You still have to pay per hour. It's depending on which plane you're flying, it's kind of like any other flying club, I'm sure. But it does make you a leasee of the flying club so that, you're able to lease those aircraft at any time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just trying to connect the dots between hangar rent, the aircraft that's in that hangar, and ownership. And I may have another question here in a minute, but I'm trying to connect those dots.
Okay.
And the reason is because and trust me, I understand this whole leasing thing. we've got 15 aircraft in 3 states, and, part of our fleet we lease, and they sit in our hangars, and I totally understand that. But at the end of the day, what the FAA looks at is if you're going to operate an aircraft, it's operational control, right? So if he has the hangar itself in his name, but the aircraft is in the hangar and the operational control is somebody else of that aircraft, there could be some subleasing going on. But I'm just trying to connect those dots to figure out how the entities, how the individuals are actually tied into the flight club from an ownership perspective.
Well, potentially, as I keep thinking through this, anyone that goes to the flight club and says, hey, I'm thinking about selling my aircraft, you want to buy it and you can have my hangar? I mean, we could have 20 hangars out there for the flight club.
Yeah.
And then 20 people on the wait list that are never going to get up there.
Sure.
So and this is where this started 2-3 months ago. We said we've got to put an end to this subleasing because these people are paying their dues, waiting and waiting and waiting, and they're not getting their hangar.
Sure.
And I think that's our biggest issue going into this. And then, of course, this letter fell on our lap, and that's what led to all of this. I can appreciate everything you guys are saying, but at the same time, we've got to make a decision as a commission what the best thing for the airport is.
Yeah. And I don't want to be in your shoes on that. So please understand, I sympathize with you guys on that. I think as you do this, you're going to find situations like this and possibly even more of what Mr. Thomas is talking about, a for-profit situations that are all over the airport.
I have no doubt, and I think we will, and I think we want to, because that's the whole point of what we're trying to do.
Sure.
And
But-
to add something to this too, just some food for thought, the most important thing to this airport, at least in my mind, is counts, because that puts us in a position for grants, right?
Sure.
And obviously, the flight club's going to have students, and, somebody renting a hangar, I wouldn't say, well, let me rephrase that, because they're not any more important, but somebody that's renting a hangar in the plane, just sitting in the hangar and only coming out of that hangar once or twice per year is totally different than somebody that rents a hangar with a plane in it that's coming out 3, 4, 5 times a week with students getting our counts up, because that's important to our airport, right? Sure. I agree with what you said earlier. I think the more hangars that are full with airplanes that are consistently being used is a good thing for our airport. No matter if it's our flight school, no matter if it's his flight club, no matter if it's jets flying in, all those types of things, all of the above. So I totally agree with that, that it's a good thing that it's an active airplane that's on the airport. But I agree with you, we got to make a decision on whether or not, if the intent was to sublease, or if the intent was truly to, hey, he's had some medical issues, he can't fly anymore a couple of years ago. The intent was, I'm trying to make sure this airport still has activity, and I can't use my plane anymore, so I need to basically sell my airplane.
But I don't really think we can base it off of that. I totally understand what you're saying, but we can't base a decision off of subleasing by how many touches do we have from that hangar.
That's not what I was saying, or what I meant.
If I may ask, how many members are there in the club?
You know how many members? 10 currently. And that number goes up and down. This is wintertime, so typically in the wintertime, people are not flying as much due to weather conditions. I've seen that number be a lot higher than that in the spring, which we're getting up close to. And that's where both of these hangars currently are housing 172s in them. That is what we use, of course, for students and so forth. So they will be getting used a bunch in the next probably 2 months, 3 months, something like that.
Are we to the point where a commissioner has a motion?
Mr. Hoyt, what did you sell him?
Sorry?
What did you sell the flying club? What kind of plane?
What kind of plane did you have?
Oh, I had a Cessna 150.
So the 150's not in that hangar.
That is correct. I sold that.
But he's still leasing as a club member, so. Sorry, I wasn't trying to be unclear on that. Sorry about that. There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Sounds like we transferred the lease of a hangar from one person to another, sold the airplane's gone, and the new leasee has the hangar that should be the one that's leasing from the city that didn't get permission to lease from the city.
Yes, with a different aircraft.
Correct.
That he has access to. If Mr. Hoyt wants to fly 172, he can go fly 172. It's sitting in the hangar he's leasing from us.
As long as he's got his medical.
Which he hasn't paid rent on in 2 years, and he hasn't flown in 2 years.
What do you mean he hasn't paid rent? Are you talking about rent on the hangar in exchange for being in the club? Okay, I'm with you.
Correct.
I think we just have to look at, we got to break the precedence of this waiting deal and decide if we want to lease this hangar to the flying club and have a clean sheet of paper.
Well, the hinky part to me is that he got something in exchange for letting him use his hangar. He got membership to the club, not paying dues. His honorary membership.
Well, that's between him and the club. As far as the airport commission needs to be considered is that the flying club is leasing the hangar. And do we want to allow that to happen and forego moving the next guy on the list up and make an exception to the rule because of what has happened? And then how do we move forward not to let something like this happen again?
Well, and to everyone's point, it's going to happen again. This is going to be brought to our attention many times moving forward.
Based off of my interpretation of the events that I've listened to at this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and say that Mr. Hoyt went ahead and subleased his hangar to the Flying Club without authorization by the Airport Commission. Therefore, I would make a motion to go ahead and have Mr. Hoyt and his lease be vacated immediately.
Motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Is it possible to have another comment from the community before another motion proceeds?
We can either accept or deny the motion at this point in time and allow for additional comment before a final vote is taken.
I haven't heard a second.
Right, so as long as we don't have a second, the motion can die, can it?
Yes.
So if you want to let the motion die and listen to this guy and then redo the motion, or we got to act on this motion, one of the two.
The motion fails for lack of a second.
But we can make the same motion after he speaks.
Sure.
Okay, so no second, so the motion fails. Let us hear what you have to say here.
Thank you, sir. I'm Nathan Bates. I'm the owner of Learn to Fly Here LLC. I'm one of the other flight schools on the Springdale Airport. And I'm a representative of Medic Choppers LLC, which is a sales company. We sell around 50 airplanes every year out of the Springdale Airport. I'm a hangar leasee as well as several other of my partners. And, you know, we have no intentions of anywhere other than the Springdale Airport. So that's a little background. The subject in question is basically someone who is a holder of a hangar lease with the city, and that person is now a fractional owner of this aircraft. So because he's a fractional owner, he still has access to the aircraft, but now he's sharing his ownership with other people. And, my airplane hangar has more than 50 airplanes that go in and out of it every year. It's not the same airplane that's there. I'm in aircraft sales. I also have training airplanes that we utilize for our service. But making the motion to terminate the lease of hangar holders who are using their aircraft and sharing their ownership does have consequences for people in the community who are operators. So I understand there's a list of people waiting to join to get hangars, and that's difficult. I'm selling a lot of airplanes, and I have, $2 million in airplanes sitting on the ramp at Springdale that I personally own. And they're sitting outside getting destroyed. I took a $30,000 hail damage claim for a loss last year from a aircraft hail damage. That was a valuable airplane. It's a $500,000 airplane, took hail damage. Insurance only covers 10% of the value of a hail damage. Everything else other than that, I have to eat it. So I'm in a desperate hangar situation as well. I would like to get more hangars. But if we find ways to terminate leases of people who currently have hangars that are in good standing with their payments, they're not in violation they are a fractional owner or they're a leasee, then is what we're doing is we're terminating leases of people in the Springdale Airport that are positive members of the community, and we're basically kicking them out. And, sometimes this does become personal, and it, maybe certain individuals could be singled out. I personally had one of my leases terminated. I went to purchase an airplane. I purchased an entire company, which had multiple airplanes. It had been operating out of the Springdale Airport for more than 20 years. I purchased this company, Welch Associates LLC. My company had been leasing the hangar, and I was notified that I needed to vacate the hangar. I said, I'm the owner of the company that's been leasing this hangar for 20 years. And they said they went and found an original lease agreement from 20 years ago. It had the name of someone who was deceased, the person I purchased the company from. He was the founder of that company. And because his name was on a lease from 15, 20 years ago, and my company was evicted from that hangar, which, I probably need that hangar more than anyone else in the community does because.
Okay, I thank you for bringing that to our attention. I think we understand what you're saying. This is a little bit different from your story, but we've got to continue on with this. Thank you for coming up and presenting that to us, though.
Okay.
Thank you.
But my point is, fractional ownership is ownership of an aircraft. Leasing an aircraft is also the use of an aircraft. I understand Cameron's point as far as the control of it, but, it's the lease agreement. It's not specific to an aircraft. It's to an individual. That individual has a right to put whatever aircraft he's using in that airplane, in that hangar. So if someone's using an airplane and they're putting that airplane in their hangar that they're leasing and they're in good standings, that's what I think is in question that's trying to be presented.
Thank you.
And if I may rebut, you're indicating that Mr. Hoyt is using an aircraft. He hasn't used an aircraft in over 2 years.
I'll make a statement. As an aircraft owner and a pilot, I'm a flight instructor. So someone doesn't have to have a medical to own an airplane or lease a hangar. They don't have to have a pilot license. They don't have to own an airplane. But in this case, he does have a pilot license. He does have the ability to fly an aircraft. And if he chooses to fly, but there's nothing in the terms or lease agreement that stipulates the amount of times you fly, how proficient you are at flying, or the size or the capability of your aircraft. I'm not against proposing those things, and I'd be all for it because I'd like all the people that have the hangars to be using the hangars. I need hangars, and I use all mine to the maximum capacity possible for everyone on the field. But in this scenario, unless there's some type of legal agreement or contract that shows his lease good standing is based off of his use or his qualifications as an individual, then, I don't think that's necessarily relevant to the topic at hand. Just my perspective.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. Does that change anything for you with your motion?
Negative. My motion will still stand, that we terminate the lease with Mr. Hoyt immediately.
I'll second. So we have a motion and a second? Yes.
I'm sorry. See, I'm so new, I don't even know what button to push. Is the lease agreement that we're looking at, is that on page 13 of our packet? Am I looking at the right document?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, that's one, all right. So, in this lease agreement, it talks about limitation on use of premises. Leasing agrees that it shall be use the premises for the storage of airplanes and materials and equipment necessary related to the operation of said airplanes, and that no other vehicles, equipment, or supplies should be stored in the premises unless expressly agreed to by lessor. Further agrees not to store flammable materials, and so on and so on. So in the terms of this agreement, there's an airplane being stowed there by the leasee. It doesn't say that he has to own it. Doesn't even say that he has to lease it. It just says he stores an airplane in it. Where in this document of this lease would we take the position to terminate his lease based on some specific language in this agreement?
Section 11. Where's section 11? Right there.
Subletting?
Yeah.
Leasing may not sublet premises in order in whole or part, or assign or transfer this lease to any other interest therein. Our power rate, listen, okay. So the airplane that is in that hangar does he have an interest in that airplane?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
1/10.
So, I'm sorry?
They've got 10 current members, so he's got 1/10 of an interest in that aircraft.
Well, it's an interest.
I'm with you, Jim. I 100% agree with you.
I mean, he didn't sublet it. He didn't say, here, company, you can have my hangar. Said, we'll leave that plane in my hangar for my lease, whatever that plane could be totally leased to him from anybody else in this room, right? He'd still have the right to keep it in there. Is that right? Okay.
Personally, I think
Now,
it's
I understand there's a complication when you get deeper than that real quick, but unfortunately, we're not there right now.
I think it's a good precedence to set that if you have ownership, no matter how small, if there were 100 members and it was 1% ownership, you have ownership of the airplane in the hangar that you are leasing from the city. I don't see an issue with it.
Well, I don't think it says that you have to own the plane that's in the hangar. You don't even have to be leasing it, if I understand it. Now, if that's what you mean, I mean, you would want to change the leases to read, you have to own the plane that's in the hangar, and you have to lease or be leasing the plane that's in the hangar. It really doesn't say that, no, I don't think.
Packet, there's a letter from the FAA talking about the use of hangars on airports. And it gives us the ability, I would assume in the case that we don't have enough airplanes needing hangars, that we could lease them out for non-aviation reasons, with the understanding that if aviation needs are there, then we can boot people for that reason. And it does say that we're supposed to have airplanes in there. So if they're empty, I think it gives us the ability to say, this empty hangar, we're going to take the lease back and give it to someone on our waiting list. So I think there's it further complicates it a little bit, but I don't think it's in violation because there's an airplane in the hangar.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second on the floor. Roll call vote, please.
McCarron,
No.
Smith, Thomason,
No.
Ulmer,
No.
Gardner,
Yes, ma'am.
McMillan,
No.
Collier.
Yes. All right. So it passes, that it fails. Thank you.
So I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make the motion that we allow the Flight Club to take over this lease to clear up this misunderstanding, so it's all under under the Flight Club itself, and that we make that change in the lease, and it's no longer under Mr. Hoyt in this case, that we allow them to take that because it is a shared interest, and we're not really taking it from somebody and giving it to someone else. We're just giving it to the larger group that he is a part of.
Before I agreed to that, because I do agree with that, I think the other gentleman, in his situation, it's the same flight club, is that correct? He's a member of? I think we need to hear from him, because if it applies to both cases, then I think the opportunity to have these two switch to NWA Flying Club, that they both be given the opportunity anyway, and then after that, then move forward with a possible vote.
What happens if Mr. Hoyt decides not to be a part of the flight club any longer?
Currently, I would say that they would be in violation of subletting because they no longer have, the owner of the lease no longer has access to the airplane and owns a percentage of it, so they would be in violation. But that's why I'm saying let's transfer it to the club itself so that it's not hooked to one particular person if it's being used by the whole group of 10 people.
There is a motion on the floor, yes? I'll second that.
Roll call vote, please.
Smith, we'll come back.
Can we repeat the motion?
Yes, please do that.
The motion was that we allow the transfer of the lease for this hangar from Mr. Hoyt to the Flight Club.
Does it
So
include
just this particular one?
Just this
not-
one,
not
since
the
I
other
feel
one?
like we're taking them separate. I agree with you, we need to hear from Mr. Crabtree, but in this particular one, I think that we make that adjustment. I think we're gonna have a lot of these, so we have to be careful, as Greg said, with precedence on this. And I like the line, I think Jim makes a really good point about ownership of a portion of that airplane. I think that anyone in this situation can come before us before we go to them and get that straightened up and cleaned up.
So if Mr. Hoyt moves to Nebraska and is no longer a member of the flight club, but the flight club has the hangar, do they still continue to be the leasee of the hangar?
If he's no longer a member of the Flight Club, then I think it breaks the agreement. They're subleasing from him. But if he moves to Nebraska and continues being a member of the Flight Club, I think he still has a partial share of that airplane in his hangar that he's leasing from us. I don't think it breaks the agreement.
But aren't you saying that you're wanting to change that to the Flight Club and out of his name? So that has no bearing on that then?
So that flight club gets the hangar, and regardless of what Mr. Hoyt does?
That's what I'm saying, yes.
That's what he's proposing, yes.
So I have a question. I don't know who this goes to necessarily. If the plane sells, does Mr. Hoyt get 1/10 of the proceeds?
Because he sold the airplane.
It's because he's leasing the plane. That's where that falls into.
If the company in New England decides to sell the plane that Steve's leasing from them, he's not going to get any of the money from it. They'll probably offer another plane.
Is there a way to clean this lease agreement up after this?
Well, you know, you have leases that are in companies' names and, you know, individuals working for the company. The gentleman that spoke previously said he has a lease. I'm told there is no lease with his name on it or his company's name on it. So I don't know if that's another situation similar to this one, but you have to look at what are the intent behind the leases, which I think you did a good job of explaining earlier. That, and the last thing we want to do is, because if you take this to the logical extreme, the flight club could theoretically, eventually, take up all the hangars and the people on the wait list never move up. So I think there's a balance somehow that has to be struck, but there is no requirement that they own the plane. But the reason you're leasing a hangar to them, and with the FAA regulations about, because, we had one recently where we evicted someone because they no longer had a plane in there. So we made it available to the next person on the list. So, it's not a one-size-fits-all arrangement for sure. I think you need to look, what's the intent behind leasing the hangar to an individual? And if that intent of leasing that hangar, that individual is no longer there, then to me, that's a sublet or an assignment which is consistent with your motion. But I do think there's other situations that are similar that may need to be looked at.
We're gonna have to go through this muddy mess every time we transfer something, because I'm not opposed to the flight club having the hangar. They're making great use of it. They're flying, and it's great for the airport, but I just don't want to set a precedent that creates issues all the way. I just don't want to spend 3 hours every other month dealing with somebody's hangar lease.
Me neither.
So I believe we have a motion on the floor. And a second?
Can you make this as a one-time?
Absolutely, one-time thing. I just know, as a board, we set precedents, but our precedence is we expect to hear from you and we'll make the decision. And after seeing 10 or 15 of these, I think we'll have a better feel of how we want to fall on this. I'm comfortable with this particular way.
It's just,
In this instance.
and just reminder about the possibility of this next month being a similar situation.
Yeah, and then the month after that for somebody else.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Thomason,
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. So the flight club now has owners, or is the leasee of that hangar.
I have a question for the city attorney. Can an individual that leases those hangars barter for the cost of that hangar for a membership to like a flight club and things like that? Because that's the situation that happened. That's the one thing that I don't feel comfortable with, is because, and this is what I want to caution everybody in the room, is that I feel like there was some bartering going on with city property, and I feel uncomfortable with that. I'm okay with the flight club using the hangar for its intent, right? But I feel like there was some bartering going on that I feel really uncomfortable about. So can you elaborate if that is even a legal thing for them to do?
Well, I don't disagree with you, but it all comes back to the subleasing assigning issue, which actually the way the lease is written, what you just did is exactly what's intended in the lease to do. And like I said, I don't think it's going to be a one-size-fits-all solution, but in this particular situation, I can prepare just a one-page document that the club can sign that they're being assigned the lease subject to the same terms and conditions that were in Mr. Hoyt's lease. So they're on the hook for the same.
Because Mr. Hoyt could become a lifetime member for selling the plane. We're going to grant you a lifetime membership so that they could keep the hangar. And so the hangar never transfers until Mr. Hoyt dies, and then we just deal with it then. But, I mean, then that's not the intent of what we want to do at this airport.
Right, because based on the motion that just passed, the lease is no longer Mr. Hoyt's lease, it's to the club's lease.
I don't know that it was a lifetime membership. For instance, if Mr. Hoyt would have went and bought another plane and put in that hangar, at that point in time, he would have no longer had a membership, and I don't think it was any kind of
Well,
lifetime.
he could still have a plane and still be a member of your flight club, can he?
Oh, absolutely, he could, yes, but it would not, at that point, he would have to decide that's what he's gonna do. Like, he can't, I'm saying, I guess he could give
Well-
up his membership and go buy a plane, or however he wanted to do it. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't know that lifetime was the word that was being used necessarily, but anyway, it's, apples and oranges for whatever it is, but.
Okay, so we're moving on down here.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Just one more comment. I know that when we've changed leases in the past, like I have a new lease that we're going to give to our members, that's been a struggle because like we still have people on the old lease when we look at the pricing, or the way it's paid. There's still old lease people that have never done anything to violate the lease. Anyone that's ever violated the lease by being late on a payment or whatever, we force them over to the new one. So if we do this in the future, we need to make sure we think of this if we ever change those, because changing leases for everybody is really a difficult multiple year. I mean, that was the case back when I started 15 years ago on this board, on this commission, is that we were trying to get people over, and I think there might be 2 or 3 names that have fallen off, and there's still 7 or 8 of them on there. So I would love to have this spelled out better, because I think the environment, the culture of way flights or way our airport works is different today. So we'll look at it then, but I mean, someone made that comment, can we change that? It is a really big process to change it. Ernest can write write it for us to where it spells out exactly what we want, but to actually force everyone that's currently has a lease with us onto that new lease agreement has been a process in the past.
Moving down, number 7. FAA policy on the non-aeronautical use of airport hangars. You have, and I am very much out of order here, but you have a picture in your packet as well as FAA guidelines.
How long has this aircraft been in this state of disrepair?
A minimum of 5 years, I was told.
I move that we consider this lease null and void and have him vacate the property immediately.
Any other comments? I'm asking for a second.
Do we know anything else about the situation? Do we know what's going on with it?
Laura, James, y'all know anything?
Back when it was first done, I don't know how many years ago that's been. I heard he took the engine to the motor shop and that was it. But that's been numerous years ago. So I can't say what's happened since then.
Should we ask it for his input on this before we, I mean, I think we're entitled either way, but just,
Has anyone spoken to him? Laura, have you addressed it with him?
No.
We just finished a conversation with the importance of aircraft moving on the airport here, and obviously that one is not moving and hasn't for a very, very long time. So
I would suggest, as we did with the other gentleman, that we have Mr. Kate write him a letter, invite him to the airport meeting next month to explain his intent and what he's going to do with the airplane, and we can make that decision.
I definitely would agree. First seek to understand before being understood, right? So I have no information on this particular situation, so.
He was behind on payments once. It's been a couple of years ago now, and I sent him a letter about your airplane is not moving. Obviously, you don't have a motor on it. If you want to give up your lease on the hangar, let me know if you can get rid of the aircraft. And he said no. I guess he's wanted to keep it, so he's paid. He's been paying.
the FAA letter says, hangars include storage of an operational aircraft and short-term storage of non-operational aircraft for purposes of maintenance, repair, or refurbishment. So I don't know what short-term is, but 5 years does not sound short-term.
I'd say short term's less than a year.
Mr. Chairman, you have a motion on the floor.
So no seconds, so the motion dies. We will ask Mr.
Should I make a motion that we have Mr. Kate send him a letter?
Sure. Okay.
I make a motion that our city attorney, Mr. Kate, send this gentleman a letter requesting his attendance to our next meeting and explaining his intents. Correct.
He said, or he'll be asked.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Thank you. Okay. Daniel, you still awake?
Just barely. That was exciting. Okay, so we didn't meet last month, of course, but in the slide that I've given you, you can see what January sales were. They were a little bit higher than, I'm sorry, they were a little bit lower than December's sales. December was a little bit lower than November's sales, which you'll see at the bottom of this page. I've added the yearly totals for fuel sales at the Springdale Airport, Jet A being down 2.2% with, when you're looking at nearly 500,000 gallons, 2.2% is a big number. But overall, I think if we'd have had a little bit more active November, we would have easily surpassed it by a couple of percent. But we really started, the winter always kind of has that decline that we expect in there. So that's what really did it. But overall, avgas was up 27%, and that has to do with the activity at the flight schools and all these aircraft that are being leased that are they're going constantly. I didn't expect to see avgas sales to be as high as they were, so that was really impressive to me. However, we do feel it. All of our operations have just been, we've been booking it almost every day, except for over the winter. We've really kind of, taken a bit of a dive off, which is expected. Having said that, we do expect our operations to climb back up as we go into spring and into the summer. With Springdale being one of the busiest airports in Northwest Arkansas, we're trying to prepare on our end logistic-wise and operations, making sure that we're taking care of our equipment is good to go. It's going to be able to handle anything that we have. We are working on trying to bring more staff on board. We're finding that already this early in the year, our mornings are a lot busier, so we're trying to bring more staff on. So a higher head count for staffing I think it's going to be necessary by the end of the year, which is a great need to have. It costs a lot of money, but if we're busy, if we're selling the fuel, then it makes perfect sense, especially with, we've got hangars all over the airport. We got to get places, we got to spend a lot of time places, and we got to still make sure home base is taken care of. So let's see. I think if I can provide just a little bit of input that might have attributed to the not as high as expected jet fuel sales is talking to Mark with Executive. He's flying all over the country and even into South America now, so he's getting a little bit busier. But what he's running into is that different FBOs around the country, especially the larger ones, whenever he's going into these big cities, they're really starting to buckle down on the minimum uplift, the minimum amount of fuel he has to take when he gets there. So he's really seen on his end that he is not able to take nearly as much out from his home base. And I think we're starting to see that with these numbers. I think we're seeing that with a couple of the other guys. So working on what it would take to make sure that everybody is going out with just as much fuel as they can possibly handle, with also having the grace of understanding that they're going to get somewhere and either get hit with a landing fee or a minimum uplift or both. To go to the Super Bowl in Vegas the other day, $10,000 for the pleasure of landing there. So unique, but the idea stands all over the country, especially as we get a lot of these conglomerates of different FBOs, Signature Atlantic, that are really taking over a lot of the places all over mid-America and even in the coast as well. They're big on the coast. So they kind of have their own rules, and it's sort of blanket rules for everybody. So that hurts. But we still have our good reputation that we can go off of, the benefits of flying into Springdale. I think we'll be able to capitalize that on going forward. Restaurant is very busy. Whenever I left, I could just hear noise, a lot of noise from upstairs. Customers coming in from the ramp side and from the street side. Everybody's really happy, and I'm seeing new faces all the time, and I'm seeing a lot of repeat customers going up there. So, so props to Manny. He's doing a great job. Really, really good job. I don't have anything else, unless you have any questions.
No questions. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. Yep.
Mr. Kate?
I don't have anything. I think I've said too much today, but I do want to say that the items 8 and 9, I think are showing that our new process is working, that we put in place last fall for the hangar development process. I think that's working really well. So, good job.
Yeah, I agree. That takes so much legwork away from the commission, not having to deal with that and ask the questions. Everything is done at the planning department, and we don't have to worry with it. And since we've set the design standards already, all they have to do is pick and choose what they're going to do. So, yeah, thank you for saying that. Okay, Laura.
I'm kind of like Ernest. I feel like I've been through a lot today already. I don't really have much new. I just found out, I guess, that we sort of got out of the loop on the radio at the towers, and James said he finally found out that they're still due in March sometime. So hopefully we'll get that taken care of. And business as usual. It's getting busy out there. Just trying to keep everything under control out there.
How close are we to having to mow?
To mow, hopefully at the end of April. Hopefully into April. That's pretty typical.
What about the stairs? Have we checked into anything on the treads for the stairs?
Still waiting. We've got one estimate back so far. Still waiting on a couple others. I did have a cleaning company come out the other day, and they're cleaner. It smells better. But the restaurant is busy. Somebody flew in on an aircraft 2 or 3 weeks ago now, but they were on the radio to the tower, and they said, "We're flying in here for the restaurant. I hope it's open. Do you know?" And the tower said, "No, I don't really know." And I was like, "They're open. Go on in." So, yeah, he's doing great up there.
You need to educate him in the tower.
They can't leave to go get lunch, so.
All right, any questions for Laura?
Looks like there's a couple people late on payments. Do you know about that first one that's on the old hangar lease? Is there another one we can move to the new hangar lease? Justice?
Can't remember.
Sorry,
anymore.
Justice?
I don't know where it's at. I'll check on it. I'm not sure 100% at the moment. I can't find mine.
To Micah's point, every chance we get, that's what we want to do. Anything else for Laura? James, what do you have for us?
Like Laura said, I spoke to the manufacturer of the radios for the tower, and he's hoping to have them here by 1st of March. So the contractor's ready to go as soon as they get here to get up there and hopefully get the tower back in service. Because without that recorder, it's just bad business.
Now, that hasn't changed, has it? Isn't that what it was initially supposed to be, March?
Yes. Yeah, and it's just making them. So supply and demand. But other than that, everything else is going great.
Questions for James? Greg with Garver.
Awesome. I'm going to get this computer plugged in real quick, and then I have a handout that I'm going to pass out so that you guys can take a look at it. What I'm handing out is that hangar development priority list that we talked about in December. I've made some updates to it to make it to make each project a little bit smaller, a little bit easier to chew, and then also to have it correspond with some of the grant funding. So I'll pass that out. All right, before I get into that hangar development priority list, I'll give an update on the ongoing projects. We've got two projects ongoing right now, the Powell Hangar Reconstruction Project and the Runway Rehabilitation and Grooving Installation Project. The Powell Hangar Reconstruction, as you know, that one is ready to go and ready for construction. We did expect construction to start in January, however, I've been talking with the contractor. They had one of their project managers ended up quitting, and so we're kind of going through a transition there. So I'm working to get them started, honestly, as soon as possible. Now that we're starting to get good weather again, some longer days, some warmer days, it'll be good to get them out there so that we can get that project started and finished. Any questions about the Powell Hangar project? Okay. The Runway Rehabilitation and Grooving Project, not a whole lot of updates on this one. We did finish our 90% design, and that has currently been submitted to the FAA for review. So they'll have about a month or so to review it before they can provide comments back to us. In the meantime, I've been meeting with Laura, with some manufacturers of some of the seal code product, as well as just doing some coordination with contractors just to get a feel for those night closures that are going to be associated with that project. All I can say now is to expect some night closures, but in the next month, I'm planning on narrowing down how many we're going to need, and then coordinating with James and Laura on when that best fits in operationally. Any questions about that project?
No question, but just clarification. We're August looking for that?
Yes, late summer is what we're looking like, and I actually talked to the FAA earlier this week, and it's really once we get comments back in a month, we can start bidding it. And so what I might do is just get with James and Laura on when it best fits in, operationally with the airport, whether that's June, July, or August, but it'll probably be that July-August timeframe. Moving on to the hangar development priority list. I wanted to provide you all a paper copy of that so you could read through it yourselves, but the projects haven't changed much compared to when we talked in December. All that I did is shrink them or make them, like I said, smaller so that a grant can cover them. So for example, if you remember this West Side Taxi Lane project, previously that was like a $600,000 or $700,000 project that I had one grant assigned to, and that would have been a $300,000 or $400,000 cost to the airport. And so to mitigate the cost just for that project, I split it into a couple phases. And so now you can see up here, we've got in blue, in your top right corner, we've got a West Side Taxi Lane, phase 1, and then a 70 by 70 box hangar right underneath it. Kind of highlighted those in blue so that you can see that those two projects are meant to go together. And you can see that if we were to do those two projects, following all the way to the right, the local share would be $83,000 for the taxi lane project and $120,000 for the box hangar. So I didn't put any priority on any of these projects. I wanted you all to have a chance to study them, and then maybe next month we can come back and talk about priority. But while I'm here, I'd be happy to answer any questions about what's listed here.
We were going to check on water access from the urban development there to those 60 by 50 and 50 by 50 box hangars.
Right, and that's something I'm glad you brought that up. The 60 by 50 and the 50 by 50 box hangars, those costs do include the water extension. And so the cost for those projects will be for everything needed to put a box hangar there. Engineering, water line extensions, all of that.
Where are we getting the water?
So the plan for that is to actually extend it from, there's a hydrant, I guess I can show it to you now that I have this pulled up. There's a hydrant that runs along, I think this is Charles, well, I guess it's Charles Avenue, but really the airport's parking lot. So the plan is to pull it from there. Just because I was unable to find a lot of good data for that development in there. And honestly, it's whenever, if the commission does decide to go with that project, I'll look into it more. But whenever I was, taking measurements, it's the difference of about 50 to 100 feet of water line. And so not a huge burden to the overall project cost. And with, you can see with this 50 by 50 and 60 by 60 box hangers, we were able to fit them in with the state's 90-10 grant and still not max out their cap.
So if I may ask on your local share estimates, 70 by 70 box hanger under phase one, 619, it's a 90-10, that should be 61,900 as a local match, not 119,000? Same thing again down there for 3 bay clear span hanger, that should be 61,360 instead of 111. If they truly are 90-10 without having some other unrecognized fees on there.
Right. Oh, so yeah, so what those two are is, I pretty much rounded up to the nearest, well, for the 3 bay box hanger, I could do a 2 bay and be well under that $500,000 cap, but for the 3 bay, that one exceeds the cap, so that one is 90% plus some change. And that change happens to be 11,000 there. For the 70 by 70, I think that one's a little bit of the same. I rounded up to be a pretty 70 by 70 number. But if you guys say, hey, we just want to do a 90-10 grant, and Greg just maximize whatever size hanger we can get once we get into the design. If that's a 70 by 65 or 65 by 65, that's something we can do as well. And Joel, I'd be happy to update these numbers so that they reflect that as well, if that's something. Okay. Yes, sir.
So it looks like the 60 by 50 and the 50 by 50, while smaller, those are a $50,000-ish for us out of pocket to get those two going, as opposed to the 120 or 110, like different pieces, but 120 for the 70 by 70.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And what you're saying is kind of what I saw as well. Those two hangars are going to be the easiest projects to tackle without having to do another project to help to go alongside it, whether that's a taxi lane extension or utility extensions or anything like that.
Your terminal parking lot, did that increase the size of the parking lot, or is that just to reseal and repaint it?
That'll increase the size. Here's an exhibit of that. Sorry, I'm trying to get my bearing here. This is the tower right here in the middle. So this kind of squeezes in right there next to the tower. The terminal building is to the top of the page right here. So this is kind of turned around a little bit for you, but so that's utilizing a 50-50 grant, which you can use your 80-20 grant for that. But it just depends on what the commission values for how you guys want to spend those grants.
And the west side taxi lane is similar to what we did on the east side last year before?
Yes, but the east side taxi lanes are a little bit more bang for your buck, where the east side taxi lane, we could build one taxi lane and let 4 developers come and build hangars. This west side taxi lane is set up so that it's pretty much just the amount of taxi lane required to get one hanger. So
It's not actually the taxi lane that's next to the to the actual landing area. It's actually this area here that you have with the 4 hangars proposed, sort of.
Sorry, are you talking about the east side or the west side?
The west side, we're not actually working on out by the runway itself. We're actually running, we're talking about this area here.
Yeah. So this area that I just highlighted in red, that west side taxi lane would be that 200 or 300 foot of taxi lane, and then curving it upwards to that first hangar. So the second one would do the same thing, would be a 200 or 300 feet of taxi lane. And then ultimately this would be a 3 or 4 phase project.
Just for the taxi lane.
Yes, just for the taxi lane, but my recommendation there is build a taxi lane with a hangar, go to the state and get a hangar grant and a taxi lane grant, and just do those at the same time.
Any other questions for Greg?
On the 3 bay clear span hanger, I walked out there the other day and measured it. I walked it out. Is there any way we can get more than just the 4 out there? I measured out 6. And I'm asking this question because we've got a list of, 80 people looking to put small private airplanes, and
We looked at that before. Was it drainage? Was there something like an easement there?
There's not an easement there, but I did, while doing this Powell Hangar project, whenever we put the clear span that's existing there now, I don't know if it was, I don't know when it was built, but we were able to get around some of the city review requirements. And so now, with the Powell Hangar, with the east side hangar that the city's done, they require 1.5 feet of freeboard is what they call it, between the finished floor of your hangar and any water that's running in a ditch or a detention pond. And so there's a ditch running right behind that hangar. And so that's going to be a problem with that project. And it might take me a few conversations with the city. Maybe we can get that 1.5 feet down to 1 foot. But what I can tell you from from when I was able to calculate it, the more hangar we put there, the more of a problem that's going to be.
did not know that. Thank you.
Anything else for Greg? Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you coming.
Yep. Thank you.
I meant to bring this up when Laura was speaking. So we're back to having some trouble with tenants parking on the grass and rutting the grass. Ernest, can we, in that situation where the grass gets torn up, can we send, if we find out who's doing that, can we send them a bill for what the cost is to repair that?
Well, yes, we could. I'm going to need some pretty good documentation as to how you determined who did it.
Like if
So-
we had a picture of a vehicle?
And a driver, because you can't always just go by the vehicle. But in fact, we were just talking about this. I was asking them if they was going to come up today, and they said no. But I know we dealt with this about this time last year. I think we were dealing with it, and I think there's been new signage that's gone up. So,
Just based off conversation I had with Laura, it's becoming a problem again.
well, I would think that first time somebody got their vehicle towed, you take care of it. But-
Oh, and that was my next point, was we've addressed this multiple times, and that seems, if the vehicle is there, that's the way to handle that, is tow it. And I don't think it'll take very many times of that, and they won't park there again.
Can you review like what our steps or escalation is for that? Is it a first-time offense, we tow them? How is that, I mean, because I know we struggle with this, so should maybe we review how we're doing that or what we're doing exactly? and
I don't
maybe-
think so, because we've addressed it so many times to the tenants there to let
Just
them
keeps
know.
happening,
Plus,
so.
we have signage up. I think we just need to do what needs done and tow those vehicles.
I completely agree.
Does the signage say that they're subject to tow?
It says no parking.
Does it say subject to tow? A lot of times there's a little sign underneath.
Some of them have, no parking subject to tow. I don't know if the ones all the way down there do, but they've been made aware of.
But don't put one on there and do it. That's what I'd say. They've been warned
Well, it's still
in
construction
writing.
city property.
Yeah, we sort of discussed a while ago about try to give everybody one warning type thing first too, not just tow a first offender.
Well, I know you guys have put a lot of notes on a lot of vehicles. It's time to move past that.
Gotten phone calls about those.
Okay, any old business from the commission? Or any comments from commissioners? Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.